Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025, and today we are talking about the effects that smoke has on crops, mulching with leaves, and what farming has taught me about people, places, myself, other things. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday. Every Tuesday is brought to you by our friends at Tilth Soil, and it's officially pre-sales season for 2026. So check out tilthsoil.com. Farmers get a pretty sweet deal on potting mix for the next season. The link will be in the show notes. I hope your last weeks of October, no less, are starting off nicely. Here it is rainy and cold, and it's going to stay rainy and cool and cold for the next week or the next 4 months, depending on how you look at it. So that's fun, and that's when I probably move the slowest in the farm. But, that's how we roll in the wintertime. Don't forget, tomorrow we are going live at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That should be fun, as always. So bring your questions here to YouTube, to the No-Till Growers channel, and Mike will help get them to me, and I will try and answer them as much as I can. Doesn't have to be all soccer-related questions either. I'm happy to talk a little bit about farming, up to you all. Also, just want to give a shout-out to our Jamaican friends and Cuban friends who are dealing with this massive Category 5 hurricane right now. We're thinking of you all and sending our love, so be safe. All right, today we are going to kick it off with another mulch segment, as we are kind of going to use the first segments on Mondays and Tuesdays for the next little while to sort of dive into each mulch and some general ideas around mulching, as well as some updated science on mulching in a bit of a series we're calling Mulch, probably. Anyway, today I thought we'd start with leaves and what they bring to the table, because at least for us here, we are headed headfirst, sometimes literally, as it should be, into leaf season. Shouts to leaf piles, which actually you should never really dive into headfirst. That's pretty dangerous. But anyway, I thought I would talk a bit more about how leaves can or possibly can't be used as a mulch, but also some of what the research says about mulching with leaves. First, it should be said that fall leaves are a great source of nutrients for the trees themselves, the trees that the leaves came from. So ideally, the leaves would just be left alone. But because people view dry leaves as ugly, with some HOAs even requiring that homeowners rake them to maintain a specific aesthetic, an aesthetic of hungry trees, I guess, and because there is an emphasis on full lawns over happy trees, leaves are often scooped up and sent off to the dump. Now, if you can intercept those leaves, obviously that's a score for you, because leaves are highly nutritious with some important caveats. Caveat 1 is that they have a high carbon to nitrogen ratio, meaning they are very heavily carbon with very little nitrogen, the ratio being somewhere around 50 to 1. So it's possible, especially when they are worked into the soil, that the leaves may lock up nitrogen a little bit more for a short while. So ideally, we are not working them into our soil, especially not right before we plant. Caveat number 2 is that leaves really should be shredded, otherwise they will easily blow away and won't easily break down. Shredding also makes them more readily accessible to soil microbes to decompose, thus releasing their nutrients more rapidly. We have an awesome neighbor who mows their leaves as they collect them, and that's an absolute just pile of gold for us, and we love them dearly for it. The leaves often contain a little bit of grass clippings, which, yes, can come with some weed seed, but also a little bit of nitrogen. In fact, if you are having to chop up your own leaves with a mower or something, do so on whatever tall green grass you have left, if you do have any, to get that nitrogen bonus. Like, basically just pile the leaves on a grassy area and then mow them up and then rake them into a bag or however you're going to use them, so long as there's not a lot of, like weed seed heads in that grass. Nutritionally, leaves also bring some sulfur, potassium, and magnesium with a decent chunk of calcium as well, among other nutrients, depending on the tree. Now, leaves will do what most mulches do, which is keep the soil cool, keep the soil in place, feed the soil, retain moisture, all the things. They are relatively easy to spread, leaves, though again, they blow around easily, even to a certain extent when shredded. So it's if it's dry and windy, a mask might not be a bad idea. They have a tendency to get in your eyes too, so maybe also some glasses. This also means you have to put a slightly thicker layer of the leaf mulch down to ensure good weed suppression, and that you have to keep them away from any salad mixes. I've said this many times. Leaves love salad mixes, and getting leaves out of a salad mix is impossibly difficult. Moreover, even more so than other mulches, I find that leaves temper the soil a lot, meaning that they do not let the soil warm very much at all in the spring. This can be a challenge when it comes to planting summer crops into beds that were leaf mulched over the winter, for instance. So I generally recommend just letting the leaves chill all winter if you can in whatever pile you made, and then mulching those beds after they have been planted with those summer crops. The leaves will not have broken down very much over the winter just because leaves hate breaking down. This is part of what makes them a good mulch. This is also in part because of a high percentage of lignin material that only fungi can really break down, and fungi are somewhat slow. Leaves become a long-lasting carbon and then nitrogen source for plants. One multi-year study found that much of the organic carbon added to the soil through the leaves in this study was still present a year after the study was ended. So it's a quite long soil investment. Notably, leaves are not shown in the research to dramatically acidify the soil, as is often a concern. Needles may be a different story in that regard, but we will get to that on another mulch show. So I guess it's worth saying, albeit late, that in the show I'm talking about deciduous leaves and not needles and that sort of stuff. Anyway, not a ton of interesting tidbits there in the research on fresh leaf mulch, but with a few good notes in there. My take is, or my preference, I suppose, is to allow the leaves to decompose for a year in a pile before using the resulting leaf mold as a surface mulch for things like, annual crops like tomatoes and peppers, etc. But if there's no lettuce mix nearby, applying chopped leaves as a longer-term mulch for overwintering beds is good by me, or adding it and then adding some compost over top to kind of lock it in place, but also to, break it down. So you have a nice, rich planting service in the spring. All good by me. What say you all? What is your leaf mulch approach? Let me know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk smoke as a mulch. No, I'm just kidding. Just smoke. We're just going to talk about it. It's just like smoke, wildfire smoke. BRB.
Hey, Jesse. This is Steven at Red Polo Farms here in Stanford, Kentucky. We're actually not too far up the road from you. We're right in the middle of a big project planting roughly 30,000 cloves. We have 28 different varieties of garlic, and we've got the BCS going, and we've got a long ways to go, so wish us luck.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Memar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Karen Mason, who writes, quote, "Just joined Patreon. Thank you. Here's my question. Does wildfire smoke affect plant growth? Here in northern Wisconsin, we had a lot of smoke this summer from the Canadian wildfires. I have spoken to a couple of other farmers and their tomatoes and peppers seemed affected. I am a new farmer on new land this year, and specifically my dahlias have not yet bloomed. Usually by August they are blooming, and I am just starting to see buds now. I wasn't sure what to expect growing in a new place, but was terribly disappointed with my results. I was glad to hear the smoke theory as a possibility for the problem. What are your thoughts? The smoke was really bad for plants and people. So many fun outdoor summer activities were canceled in July because it just hurt to be outside breathing for so many people. Thanks." End quote. All right, this is a great and important question. And in fact, yes, smoke affects growth and farm workers and farmers markets and others in many, many ways. We talk about the importance of mitigating wildfires for the obvious safety reasons, right? Fire's dangerous, but rarely in terms of farm productivity, which is a shame because it is not an insignificant issue. Now, I won't be able to tell you if the dahlias were the result of the smoke or when you planted them or any soil management stuff or anything like that, really. But I can tell you some interesting things that I could find in the research that gives us an idea of how smoke affects plants and productivity. It should be said that wildfires and their duration are increasing according to a WHO study, which means more and more of us will be managing smoke as a force in years to come. As it pertains to plants, smoke's effects are quite complicated. In some cases, chemicals found in smoke can actually stimulate plant germination. That, of course, is good if it's a species you want and not so good if it's an invasive species. Smoke itself in the sky can be positive or negative for some plant growth, depending on the density of the smoke. In some lighter cases, smoke may diffuse the sunlight and actually increase photosynthesis. Remember, we love diffuse sunlight here. In more severe cases, however, smoke can reduce light and slow down photosynthesis. Anecdotally, at least, a few years ago when we had all that smoke pounding us from the Canadian wildfires in the spring, indeed all the way down here in Kentucky, we had one of the coolest, slowest springs I can remember, not to mention some of the hardest working conditions, but more on working conditions in a minute. So some diffuse sunlight from smoke may be okay, but the reality is that most situations it's likely to slow down production, according to research, quoting one 2024 Greek study out of Greece. Study wasn't in Greek. Anyway, if the overall amount of solar radiation is reduced too much, then any advantage from more diffuse radiation may be lost, end quote. Basically, it may be beneficial, but only to a point. There's also evidence that some plants can absorb a percentage of nitrogen from the smoke of low-intensity fires at least, but it's not clear if that really relates to any crops we grow because, well, many wild plants evolved in ecosystems that were heavily fire-laden, so they adapted methods for managing that fire and, for instance, germinating when they sense smoke. Not all plants fit that description, and biologists can feel free to fill in my gaps here. But before anyone gets too excited that it may be a boon, thick smoke contains ash that can clog the pores of leaves, making it difficult for the leaves to diffuse CO2 for photosynthesis. There is also this interesting risk of fungal and possibly other pathogens that might be found in wildfire smoke being transported long distances. I thought this was really fascinating. There was a study in the 80s that found a sugarcane rust from Africa in the Dominican Republic because the cane in Africa had been burned, launching the spores high into the atmosphere, and then they floated all the way to the Dominican Republic. Quoting the article, quote, "Burning of diseased plants is so widespread and often mandated that there are many similar scenarios for the launching of pathogenic microbes by fire-induced convection," end quote. And from that same article, they discuss how this sort of transmission of diseases is fairly common. Quote, "This phenomenon is well known and can sometimes be forecast. For example, the North American Plant Disease Forecast Center at North Carolina State University publishes on the internet," I don't know why they said on the internet, but anyway, on the internet, "forward trajectories of a spore that causes downy mildew in squash, cucumbers, pumpkins, and muskmelons, and another spore that infects tobacco. Similar forecasts might be relevant to smoke events," end quote. And of course, there is also the farmer or farm worker who has to breathe and may be breathing in not just pathogens, but also, well, carcinogens. In the short term, it's just not fun to work in smoke. Smoke can irritate the lungs and the eyes and possibly the skin. In the long term, risks of cancer may increase due to overexposure. Productivity declines from harsh working conditions. Farmers' markets get shut or limited, thus decreasing revenue for farmers. Food quality and even potentially flavor change. Moreover, fires are not always just trees and brush burning. Houses and buildings and various plastics and chemicals burn too. The smoke, in other words, is not just like wood smoke. It can be a lot of different stuff. I personally think this points to a greater need for better fire management, where our atmosphere and plants could survive, if not even benefit, from small amounts of smoke in the atmosphere, sometimes from prescribed controlled burns. But without that sort of good ecological brush management, the fires get out of hand and the smoke concentrations become significant with so much fuel buildup. So anyway, that's what I have on smoke for the day. What did I miss, or what did I get wrong, or what else should I have included? Got any wildfire smoke stories for us? Let us know. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about what farming has taught me about people and farming and stuff. That'll make sense in a minute. Be right back. All right, so most of what you see is just dead buckwheat, right? And then underneath of it is like crimson clover coming up. This is a sunflower. Sunflower. Those are all sunflowers. This is all from our milpa patch, and they are fine, despite a pretty heavy frost.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, so a bit of a story time today. I've been thinking about how our farm has changed over the 14 years that it's actually been like a farm entity. It's moved several times due to a variety of factors, and it has been on good soil and meh soil and clay soil and loam, but it has also moved from way out, like in the middle of what we would call maybe nowhere, to where it is now, which is almost a neighborhood. And I have to say, I enjoy the location that we're in now the most that I've ever enjoyed any location. And if we ever moved again, we would probably look again to be relatively nearby people, even if the soil itself is not as good as other places that we've lived. To back up, we tried a couple farms before we landed back where we apprenticed in Bug Tussle, Kentucky. Bug Tussle, if the name doesn't give it away, was not super densely populated. The population was without question some of our favorite people in the world and remain that way, but there were just not a ton of them. Much of that community, element of that farming community, as it has been with many farming communities in the country, had left or moved closer to a city. Part of that is for jobs, but also part of that is self-fulfilling, right? It's like where the community goes, the community will follow. So as much as we, loved it there and loved those people, it was also quite lonely at times. It was also quite isolated, to the point that when we wanted to do something, we had to drive an hour or so to do it, which was time and just money intensive. When we had our first child born right there in the cabin, that's when not only the loneliness felt most vivid, but definitely the isolation. Not having a consistent hand to help with the kid locked Hannah down quite a bit because our parents lived 3.5 hours away, and made our job significantly more difficult overall, especially with an off-grid cabin, that all the heat and cooking fuel came from our hands. And I mean, by hands, I really mean a chainsaw, of course. We weren't that crazy. So we made a move to be closer to family. In so doing, we moved closer to town. Whereas before, where we were 30 minutes from even a Walmart, in this new location, we were 35 minutes from Lexington and less than an hour from Louisville. These are pretty major cities in our state. This opened up the possibility for more social interaction, but also for better markets and business potential as a business. And because we were closer to family, we suddenly had a lot more help with our first child and later the second. The primary flaw with this other farm that we were on was that although it had great soil, the land was cheap, and its closeness to markets was great, its proximity to a busy parkway and a gun range, which often made making videos on that farm kind of a hoot, and it was also really inaccessible to customers. So we were having a CSA customer pickup on the farm, but it was painfully difficult to actually get to the farm because of the long, narrow road. And it was, you couldn't really pass anybody. So people didn't love coming back there. Also, the house was a single wide long trailer and would one day have to be replaced just because it was old. So we would have to either build a house or find a new one. The latter felt like the better option. So in 2020, while prices were still reasonable on farmland, we found the farm where we currently live, and it met a lot of the criteria, including good soil, according to the soil maps that tricked us, those goofballs. Our one concern, however, was how big of a change it would be being so close to town all of a sudden and embedded around so many people, because like I said, it's kind of a neighborhood. But I have to say, we have loved it. As I often note, when you have one neighbor, they better be good. When you have 10, you just need, like most of them to be good. And we have nothing but good neighbors here, just notably. The kids have playmates. Well, I guess it's kind of cheating because one of our neighbors runs a daycare, but they have playmates. We have friends in the neighborhood. We are less than 10 minutes from the soccer field, 45 minutes from 2 professional soccer stadiums. So those things are important to me. Within an hour of countless different restaurants and markets. Anyway, I guess all that to say, it's hard to know what you want out of a farm, and everyone is going to be different until you actually farm. And to be sure, we wanted something different before we had kids versus after. When we were kid-free, we were happy to just spend our time working and chopping wood and foraging and, just exploring the woods and doing all the things. Now, however, we love the community that we found, and we love our proximity to it, and we love that our children, it's so easy for them to have friends around and play. I don't know that I have an overarching point to the story, except to say that what we thought of as a farm out in the middle of the countryside, several minutes drive from the nearest person, we found was not ultimately what we wanted for ourselves and our kids. For some, they will want the solitude and enjoy it when they find it. And for sure, there are times when I miss that. But also for other people like Hannah and myself, I think they will start farms and miss people. I think we as humans are pretty social creatures, and we like the protection and warmth of a community. Maybe that means creating that community, as we talked about with Mikey and Kez in that conversation last week, in the area wherever you farm, which I think is an awesome goal. Or maybe it just means taking slightly less farmland to be a part of an existing community or closer to a community. No one right answer there, but I do think it was important for us to not think too permanently about any one farm we've lived on, and instead listen to what the farm told us about ourselves and what we wanted. Any of that resonate with you all? Let us know. And otherwise, we will call it a Tilth Tuesday and get ready for the live tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Cheers to that. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook. I just realized I'm wearing my FC Cincinnati hat, so here we go. Got a couple new ones that will be on the site soon. You can pick those up or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up at all in the month of October, you got a few days left, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, Tuesdays have been a curse on our Patreon signups. No new ones today. No new bump ups. It's all good. The story will just have to continue on Thursday with the live tomorrow. It's hard to do a live story. But anyway, poor little Anne, all alone with her imagination. We'll have to see what happens on Thursday. Thank you all for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. Bye.